Let me first put a shout out right now, if I could, for www.noblegoldinvestment.com. That's www.noblegoldinvestment.com. You know, Noble Gold CEO Colin Plume thinks that quantitative tightening is setting up the stage for a gold rally. And in his interview with the National Desk, Colin Plume said that the tightening is pushing the dollar up. However, he predicts that by next year, the Fed will print money again to restart the economic activities. If you're thinking of gold and silver right now, good time to do it. Noble Gold is giving a free gold American Eagle coin with every eligible IRA or 401k rollover in this month of September. You can't go wrong with noblegoldinvestments.com. Pick up the phone Tuesday morning at 877-646-5347. That's 877-646-5347. And find out about your financial planning. Let Noble Gold help you. And tell them that Pastor Paul Begley sent you there.
DeSantis claims credit for sending 2 planes carrying migrants to Martha's Vineyard. 2 planes carrying migrants were sent by Florida Governor Ron DeSantis to Martha's Vineyard on Wednesday night, his office said, infuriating Democratic politicians and prompting a frenzied response that included humanitarian aid by locals and assistance by Massachusetts officials. It's the latest in a series of moves by Republican governors to transport migrants to northern liberal enclaves to protest what they say are inadequate federal efforts on southern border security. Located off the coast of Massachusetts and long known as a posh summer destination for wealthy vacationers, Martha's Vineyard provided an unusual and unexpected place for the migrants to be sent. Planes carrying 50 migrants from Venezuela and Colombia landed unexpectedly at Martha Vineyard Airport Wednesday afternoon. Island officials and volunteers quickly rallied to find temporary shelter for the group. Florida Governor Ron DeSantis later issued a statement to media outlets confirming that the airlift, quote, was part of the state's relocation program to transport illegal immigrants to sanctuary destinations. Martha's Vineyard has long been favored vacation spot for left-leaning celebrities and Democratic politicians, including former President Barack Obama, who owns an $11.75 million estate where he celebrated his 60th birthday with a blowout party last year. Online responses to the reports about the migrant arrivals included outrage from readers, including one who said, quote, "Any blame lays at the feet of President Biden." Xi tells Putin, "We are ready to team up with our Russian colleagues." Russian President Vladimir Putin and Chinese leader Xi Jinping met in Uzbekistan, where they reaffirmed their commitment to strengthening their relationship and putting their mark on the global scale. The 2 authoritarian leaders met on the sidelines of the Shanghai Cooperation Organization on Thursday in Xi's first trip outside his country since the start of the coronavirus pandemic. Quote, "In the face of the colossal changes of our time on a global scale, unprecedented in recent history, we are ready to team up with our Russian colleagues to set an example of a responsible world power and to play a leading role in putting a rapidly changing world on the track of sustainable and positive development," Xi told Putin, according to TASS, Russian state media. Speaking at the start of talks with Xi in Uzbekistan, Putin said he was ready to discuss unspecified concerns by China regarding Ukraine. Quote, "We highly appreciate the well-balanced position of our Chinese friends in connection with the Ukrainian crisis," Putin said, facing Xi across a long table. Quote, "We understand your questions and your concerns in this regard, and we will certainly offer a detailed explanation of our stand on this issue during today's meeting, even though we already talked about it earlier," he added. China and Russia share a similar vision for a multipolar world less dominated by the United States, one that emphasizes economic relationships and non-interference in other countries' politics, including human rights violations. President Biden says tentative railway labor deal reached, averting a strike. President Joe Biden announced on Thursday that a tentative railway labor agreement has been reached, averting a nationwide strike that could have been devastating to the economy before the pivotal midterm elections. Railroads and union representatives had been in negotiations for 20 hours at the Labor Department, well past midnight, to hammer out a deal, as there was a risk of a strike starting on Friday that could have shut down rail lines across the country. The president brought business and union leaders to the Oval Office on Thursday morning, then hailed the deal in remarks in the White House Rose Garden. Quote, "This agreement is a big win for America," President Joe Biden said Thursday at the White House, thanking negotiators for the unions and the rail carriers, after what he said were 20 hours of a marathon talks ahead of a looming Friday deadline. For the president and fellow Democrats, the deal offers a measure of political relief after fears that the economic fallout from a strike could further squeeze households hit by stubbornly high inflation. The 5-year deal, retroactive to 2020, also includes $5,000 in bonuses. The railroads agreed to ease their strict attendance policies to address union concerns about working conditions. Railroad workers will now be able to take unpaid days off for doctor's appointments without being penalized. Previously, workers would lose points under the attendance system at BNSF and Union Pacific Railways, and they could be disciplined if they lost all their points. Vice President Kamala Harris ignores question on migrants arriving outside her residence after secure border claim. Vice President Kamala Harris refused to comment on Thursday on the 2 migrant buses from Del Rio, Texas, that had arrived outside her residence at the Naval Observatory in Washington, D.C. just hours earlier. The border crossers were sent on migrant buses as part of Texas Governor Greg Abbott's operation, which has sent thousands of people arriving at the United States-Mexico border to sanctuary jurisdictions like New York City, Chicago, and Washington, D.C. in recent months. As promised, Abbott sent the latest string of migrant buses to Harris's residence, the Naval Observatory in Washington, D.C., though they were not greeted by the vice president, despite her years of advocating on behalf of border crossers and illegal aliens. Abbott tweeted that he'd sent the buses that arrived Thursday, quote, "We're sending migrants to her backyard to call on the Biden administration to do its job and secure the border." About 24 men and women stood outside the U.S. Naval Observatory at dawn, clutching clear plastic bags of their belongings carried with them over the border before moving on to a nearby church. Harris's office had no immediate comment. Germany edges closer to nationalization of ailing gas importer Uniper. Germany's Uniper said on Wednesday the government might take a controlling stake in the company as the ailing gas importer seeks further aid, paving the way for what could result in a full nationalization of the firm. Germany is in talks to take over Uniper, VNG, and securing energy for Europe as the main solution to the country's energy woes, which have been exacerbated by Russia's invasion of Ukraine and the subsequent lack of Russian energy flowing to Europe, according to a Thursday report in Bloomberg. The potential move comes as Europe has already passed a series of bailouts as the energy crisis has deepened, with Uniper reporting that the company lost as much as $100 million a day after Europe was cut off from Russia's main pipeline. Surging gas prices and Moscow's move to squeeze supplies to Europe have already prompted a series of government bailouts and rescue loans. But those measures are increasingly dwarfed by the scale of the crisis, and there's a risk that systemic energy providers collapse without more robust government support. A coordinated swoop on the 3 firms would mark a clear escalation in Europe's response to the energy war being waged by Russia.